Welcome back, my friends. Welcome again to Dark Tales with David. I'm your old companion, David Miller. Tonight, I bring you a story from a place that once thrived, but now lingers in whispers. A story of greed, betrayal, and the price of turning your back on those who saved you. This is the tale of Edward Collins,
of Ravenbrook, a man who thought he could cheat loyalty, buy love, and silence fate. But fate has claws. And Edward, he learned that every coin earned through betrayal is cursed. So pour your coffee, my friends, lean closer to the firelight, and let me take you back to Ravenbrook in the 1960s. Where betrayal was written in every cobblestone, and where karma was waiting. Ravenbrook, a town you'd barely find on the map today. Back in 1967, it wasn't much either, just a cluster of brick houses, a church bell that rang too late or too early, and cobblestone streets that echoed more with gossip than footsteps. But it had a pulse, it had life, and at the heart of that life stood two men, Edward Collins and Martin Hayes. Edward Collins, sharp suits, polished shoes, a man who carried himself as though he already owned the world. His little shop sat on Main Street, where he sold fabrics, watches, even imported cigars. People whispered about his money, but they never whispered about how he got it. Martin Hayes, on the other hand, oh, Martin, he wasn't flashy. He was honest. He ran a modest woodworking shop just around the corner, fixing chairs, building cabinets, carving headboards with hands that carried both skill and patience. And years ago, when Edward was nothing but a drowning man in debt, it was Martin who reached out his hand and pulled him from ruin. People in Ravenbrook remembered that. They remembered how Martin loaned Edward $5,000, a fortune in those days, and gave him time, faith, and a way back onto his feet. Edward never missed a chance to thank him back then, always raising a glass in the tavern, always calling Martin brother. But, brothers don't stay brothers forever when greed grows between them. By 1967, Edward's shop was booming. He was making deals with traveling traders, even reaching buyers in New York. And one day, a business proposal came down the line, a chance to open a second shop in a larger neighboring town, Fairmont, the kind of deal that could double profits overnight. Edward had no capital of his own for expansion, but Martin had savings tucked away. The two were supposed to go in together, build it as partners. But, betrayal doesn't knock at your door with a warning. It slips in, quiet as smoke. And Edward? He signed the papers without Martin. He cut him out entirely, used forged agreements, whispered lies about Martin being unreliable, and suddenly Martin was erased. Can you imagine, my friends? The man who once saved you, pushed aside like a shadow. Ravenbrook folk were stunned, whispering in the church pews and outside the bakery. Some said Edward would pay for it. Others said, money makes its own rules. But Martin, he said nothing, just kept walking the same cobblestone streets, his eyes a little heavier, his back a little more bent. And me? I ask you now, what do you think? Is betrayal worse when it comes from a stranger or when it comes from the very hand you once saved? Think about that, my friends, because Edward Collins had made his choice, and choices always come back. Edward Collins didn't just stop at cutting Martin out. Huh, no, greed has a way of stretching its fingers, reaching further and further until even blood becomes just another coin to spend. Edward had a daughter, Clara Collins, a bright girl, 17 in 1967, with auburn hair that caught the sunlight like fire, and eyes that never quite trusted the world she lived in. Clara wasn't spoiled, no. She was thoughtful, almost fragile in her kindness, and she loved someone, deeply, truly. That someone was Thomas Hayes, Martin's son. Can you see where this is heading, my friends? Two children bound by love while their fathers stood on opposite sides of betrayal. Clara and Thomas dreamed of leaving Ravenbrook together, of building a small life in Fairmont or maybe even New York. They whispered in the churchyard after services, held hands under the fading gas lamps at night, and promised each other they'd never let go. But Edward had other plans. He'd set his eyes on another family in Ravenbrook, the Davenport family, wealthy, connected, and eager to expand their influence. Their son, Richard Davenport, was everything Edward wanted for Clara: money, prestige, and an alliance that would lock the Collins name into higher circles. But Richard was not a kind man. Everyone in town knew he drank too much, gambled away his father's cash at the Fairmont halls, and treated women like prizes to be won, not souls to be cherished. But Edward saw none of that. Or perhaps he did, and chose to ignore it. All he saw was numbers, contracts, profits. So one evening, sitting in the parlor of his large, creaking house, Edward told Clara her fate. "You'll marry Richard Davenport," he said, his voice flat, his cigar smoke curling in the lamplight. Clara's heart sank. She cried, she pleaded, she even said Thomas's name. But Edward slammed his fist against the oak table. "You will not waste your life on a Hayes. That family is beneath us now." Betrayal runs like a river, my friends. First, Edward betrayed Martin, the man who saved him. Now, he betrayed his own daughter's heart. Clara's tears echoed in that parlor. She tried to speak, but Edward silenced her with one sharp glare. To him, love was weakness. Only money had weight. Only deals mattered. But I ask you this hot: can you really chain the heart? Can you silence love forever? Or does it find its way through the cracks, no matter how heavy the locks? Stay with me, my friends, because Clara's love for Thomas, it wasn't just a whisper. It was a storm, and storms have a way of tearing roofs clean off the proudest of houses. Ravenbrook was a small town, and in small towns, secrets don't stay secrets for long. Clara's tears in her father's parlor didn't just stain the carpets, they spilled into the streets. Neighbors noticed. The baker's wife saw her walking with her head down. The tailor caught her eyes red and swollen, and soon whispers began to flutter around the church pews. "Edward's forcing her to marry Richard Davenport," they said. "But isn't she in love with Martin's boy?" Tongues wagged, hearts grew heavy, and for the first time, even those who once admired Edward Collins began to shift in their seats when his name was spoken. Meanwhile, Clara and Thomas clung to each other in the shadows. They met by the river at night, where the old wooden bridge creaked under the weight of their footsteps. Clara would sob into Thomas's shoulder, her hands clutching at his shirt as if holding him tighter could stop time. "He'll never let us be together, Thomas," she whispered. "He says your family is beneath us." Thomas, poor Thomas. His voice shook. But he tried to sound strong. "Then we'll leave, Clara. We'll run. I'll find work in Fairmont. I'll build us a life. You'll see." But Clara's sobs betrayed her doubt. She knew her father's grip was iron. Edward wasn't just a man, he was a wall of stone. with money stacked high enough to crush any dream that dared rise against it. But yet, Clara's love for Thomas did not fade. In fact, it burned brighter under the weight of her father's chains. Every cruel word from Edward, every glare across the dinner table, only pushed her closer into Thomas's arms. But here's the thing about betrayal, my friends. It leaves trails. And in Ravenbrook, trails always led to someone's ears. Richard Davenport, the man Edward wanted for Clara, began to hear rumors. Oh, he didn't like what he heard. Not one bit. One night at the tavern, drunk on brandy and pride, Richard slammed his fist against the counter and spat, "If Clara Collins thinks she can choose a haze over me, she'll learn the price of disrespect." The tavern fell silent. Men looked away, because everyone knew Richard Davenport was dangerous when crossed. Here's the question, my friends. When love is forced into shadows, does it grow stronger, or does it rot under fear? You're thinking about it now, aren't you? But listen carefully, because Clara and Thomas were about to find out. And Edward Collins? He was too busy counting his dollars, too blind to see the storm building under his very roof. The days grew heavier, my friends. Inside the grand household, silence was no longer peace, it was tension. William, the father, still carried hope in his chest, whispering that his son might return to his senses. But beneath that hope, there was fear. Daniel, once a boy who laughed with his parents, now spent long nights away. His mother Eleanor would wait by the window, watching shadows on the road. Maybe tonight," she would whisper. But the footsteps that came home were slow, careless, and cold. Daniel had begun to live for someone else, not his family. It was a woman named Clara, beauty that blinded, words like honey dripping into Daniel's ears. She told him he was meant for more, that his parents only held him back. And Daniel, he listened. He believed her. The more time he gave to Clara, the more distance he created at home. William tried to speak sense into him. "Son, blood is blood. Don't let sweet lies break what's eternal." But Daniel only turned away, anger flashing where love once lived. Nights became arguments, days became silence. Eleanor prayed, William worked harder, hoping to shield what little peace remained. But Clara's grip grew tighter, and Daniel, he slipped further, each choice cutting deeper into his parents' hearts. Friends, can you feel it? That moment when a family starts to fracture, when trust is replaced by doubt, and love feels like it's slipping through your fingers? That was the grand home now. And yet, none of them knew the true storm was still waiting just beyond the horizon. The whispers began, my friends. In small towns, secrets never stay secrets for long. People started talking. They said Daniel was no longer the same, that Clara's beauty was a mask, hiding something sharp beneath. Eleanor heard it first at the market. A neighbor leaned close and whispered, "Your boy's been seen at the gambling halls, with her." Oh, Eleanor's heart nearly stopped. She clutched the basket in her hands so tightly her knuckles turned white. When she told William, he shook his head slowly. "No, not our son. Daniel wouldn't." But late that night, Daniel stumbled home, his steps unsteady, his eyes glassy. Clara lingered behind him, her smile cold as the moonlight. "Father," Daniel snapped, "don't look at me like that. I'm not your little boy anymore." William's jaw tightened. He wanted to grab his son, shake sense into him, but instead he whispered, "Daniel, we raised you with love. Don't throw it all away." Clara slid her arm through Daniel and laughed. "Love doesn't pay, Mr. Grant. Dreams don't buy freedom. Your son understands that now." Those words, they cut through William like a knife. Eleanor wept quietly in the corner, whispering Daniel's name over and over, as if calling him back from a place too far gone. The house that once echoed with warmth now felt colder than winter, and Daniel, blinded by Clara's promises, didn't see the storm he was walking into. My friends, tell me, have you ever watched someone you love slip further and further away, no matter how tightly you try to hold on? That was William and Eleanor living every single day. But fate was listening, karma was waiting, and soon Clara's sweet poison would show its true venom. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and with every passing day Daniel slipped further into Clara's world. The taverns, the gambling tables, they became his second home. William would sit by the window late at night, watching the road, praying to see his son's silhouette return before dawn. But when Daniel came, he came with anger in his eyes, and Clara at his side. Eleanor tried once more. One evening she set a warm plate of food on the table. "Daniel," she whispered, "sit down. Eat with us, like before." Daniel sneered. "Before? Before what, Mother? Before I opened my eyes? Before I realized you and Father wanted me chained to this small, pathetic life?" Eleanor's hands trembled. "No, Daniel, we only ever wanted your happiness." Clara leaned against the doorway, her voice like poison wrapped in silk. "He doesn't need happiness, Mrs. Grant. He needs freedom, and with me, he'll have it." William slammed his fist against the table. "Enough. Clara, you've filled his head with lies. Daniel, open your eyes. That woman, she will ruin you." But Daniel didn't listen. His face twisted with rage. "No, Father, you're the one ruining me. If you can't accept Clara, then maybe I don't need this family anymore." Those words, they hung in the air like smoke after fire. Eleanor fell into her chair, clutching her chest as tears streamed down her face. William, silent, stared at his son, this boy he had raised, now a stranger standing before him. Daniel stormed out with Clara, leaving the door swinging open. The night air rushed in, cold and merciless, and for the first time, William felt the truth. Their son was gone. But friends, fate doesn't let betrayal go unpunished. Not forever. Daniel thought he had won. Thought walking away from his parents made him stronger. But little did he know, he had just opened the door to his own downfall. The next weeks were a blur of dice, cards, and coin. Daniel sat at the gambling table in the Rusty Lantern Tavern, tossing silver dollars like they were nothing. Clara sat beside him, smiling, whispering in his ear, "Bet more, Daniel. Don't hold back. Show them you're a man who takes what he wants." And Daniel listened. He lost $50 one night, then $200 the next. By the end of the month, he owed more than $1,000 to men whose smiles were sharp as knives. One night in the alley behind the tavern, two collectors cornered him. Their names, Jack Mallory and Curtis Pike, men known across Ravenbrook for breaking bones before breakfast. "Listen, Greenwood," Jack hissed, pressing Daniel against the wall. "You owe us money. You got till Friday, $1,200. No excuses." Daniel's voice cracked. I swear, I'll get it. Clara and I we'll find a way." Curtis leaned close, his breath heavy with whiskey. "You better, or we'll take payment in something else. Understand?" Daniel nodded furiously. When they left, his hands shook. He turned to Clara. "What do we do? They'll kill me if I don't pay." Clara's eyes glittered. "You know where the money is, Daniel. Your father keeps it locked away in that old chest. It's just sitting there, waiting. Take it. He'll never know." And in that moment, the son who once dreamed of building with his father began planning to steal from him. Back at the cottage, William sat in his chair, exhausted, staring into the dying fire. He didn't know that his son, the boy he loved more than life itself, was already thinking of betrayal that would shatter him. The night Daniel made his choice, Ravenbrook was quiet. The streets, wet from rain, glistened like black glass under the lanterns. He walked slowly back towards the cottage, every step heavier than the last. Inside his jacket pocket, he carried a small iron key. He had stolen it from William's drawer earlier that week. The key to the wooden chest, the one his father had kept locked for years. That chest wasn't just wood and iron. No, my friends, it was William Greenwood's lifeline. Inside lay every dollar he had earned from long days of carpentry, every coin saved from years of sweat. About $3,000 in neat bundles, money meant for repairing the roof, buying food for the winter, and maybe, just maybe, a better future for Daniel himself. But Daniel wasn't thinking of the roof. He wasn't thinking of his father's aching back or empty cupboards. Oh, no, he thought only of Clara's smile, of the menacing voices of Jack and Curtis, and of the sweet escape money promised. "Just a little, just enough," he muttered to himself as he slipped into the cottage. The fire had gone out, and William snored softly in his chair, his head tilted to the side, a blanket falling from his shoulders. Daniel's hands shook as he crept past. He crouched before the chest, slipped the key inside the lock, and turned it. Click. The sound echoed louder than thunder in his ears. He lifted the lid. The bundles of money lay there like buried treasure. His heart raced. "Forgive me, Father," he whispered, though his hands didn't stop. One bundle, two bundles. He stuffed them into his coat until nearly half the chest was empty. $1,500 gone in a single night. When he closed the chest, he couldn't look back, couldn't see the sleeping figure of William, whose dreams still held hope for a son who was already slipping away. Out in the rain, Daniel clutched the money tight. Clara was waiting at the tavern. She kissed him, laughed softly, and said, "See, I knew you had it in you." But what Daniel didn't know, was that every stolen dollar carried a curse heavier than the gold itself. The morning after the theft, the cottage felt colder. William Greenwood stirred awake in his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. He walked to the wooden chest, as he always did, to check that his savings were safe. His hand trembled as he lifted the lid. The bundles looked lighter. His eyes narrowed, his chest tightened. He counted once, twice, then a third time. His heart dropped like a stone in a well. Half the money was gone. $1,500 vanished in a single night. William stumbled back, clutching his chest. No, no, it can't be. He searched the room, checked the doors, the windows. Nothing was broken, no forced entry. The only one who could have done it. Ah, the thought burned him more than fire itself. Daniel. Still, William wanted to believe otherwise. Maybe he misplaced it. Maybe he was too tired to count. But deep down, a father knows. He knows the weight of his son's footsteps, the smell of his coat when he slips in after midnight, the faint trace of tavern smoke and perfume. By afternoon, whispers spread through Ravenbrook. Old Mrs. Weller, the neighbor, saw Daniel leaving with a bulging coat. The blacksmith's apprentice said Daniel had been flashing fresh bills at the tavern, buying rounds of ale for Clara and her friends. When William heard, he sat down at the kitchen table and covered his face. His hands, rough from years of labor, shook. My son, my only son. The words broke in the silence. That night, Daniel didn't come home. He stayed at the tavern, laughing with Clara, handing out coins as if money grew on trees. Clara leaned close, her lips brushing his ear. See, darling, you're finally becoming a man. Ah, with money like this, we'll leave this town behind. Daniel smiled, but inside fear gnawed at him. His father's face, his father's trust, they haunted him even as Clara's hand slid over his. And William? He sat alone by the empty chest, staring into the shadows. For the first time in his life, he felt truly old. Betrayal doesn't strike like lightning, my friends. It seeps in, iron like water through cracked wood. And once it's there, it never leaves the same. The days that followed grew heavier in Ravenbrook. William kept quiet, though his silence cut deeper than words. He didn't confront Daniel, not yet. Instead, he watched. He watched the boys stumble in late, the smell of ale thick on his clothes, the jingling of coins that weren't his to jingle. One evening, William followed him. Step by step, slow and steady, the old man kept to the shadows of Raven Lane. He saw Daniel walk proudly into the tavern, tossing a few dollar bills onto the bar. "Drinks for everyone," Daniel shouted, his voice loud, his laugh louder. The cheers that followed were hollow, fed by greed and free ale.